Well, hello, all you musers out there. Welcome to another brand new episode of Musing While Boozing. That's right, the adventure continues. Hope everyone there is doing good, and hope you're not as fucking frustrated as I've been the last 2 days, let me tell you. We do mention on the podcast, because it was recorded a couple days ago, that me and the wife and the kids, we were heading down to Disney World, right, for the family vacation of a lifetime. Well, it should all be cleared up by the time this broadcast drops, but currently the biggest issue going on there right now is the goddamn Hurricane Irma. I mean, there are worse things in the world than having your vacation interrupted, but let me tell you, our plans were completely rocked by this hurricane. That's right. So, Disney called and said, guess what, guys? Your vacation's canceled. You're not going to be able to make it down here. So, had to come up with alternative plans. Well, managed to make a cut a deal with Air Miles, use up a whole bunch of hotel points, flip the script, and next thing you know, we're going from Florida all the way over to the left coast, and the Kopp family's on an adventure. We are California dreaming. That's right, pack the bags and head out. We are going to Disneyland. So it should be quite the adventure. I've personally never been to California, so this is going to be a pretty exciting adventure for us. We leave in about, 48 hours from now. Don't exactly feel totally prepared, but the best way to procrastinate is to get your podcast ready. So today's podcast, let's quickly go over some of the sponsors here. First thing we want to talk about is Dan Soder. Dan Soder is going to be showing up at Rumors. He's going to be there on September 28th, 29th, and 30th. Dan's been a New York stand-up show. He's been on John Oliver's. He's been inside Jamie. I don't think he's been inside Amy Schumer, but he's been on inside Amy Schumer. He's been on the Central Comedy Central's The Half Hour, and he has been featured on Netflix's The Stand-Ups. And he just had his very first special drop. It's called Not Special. I probably disagree with that, but that's out on Comedy Central this year. Got a little clip here from Dan Soder we'd like to play, so listen up. And this is the gentleman who'll be coming out to Rumors Comedy Club.
I don't trust the children. One's being made now, the 2014 model. No, thank you. Mostly because their parents are my friends. They shouldn't be breeding. They're animals. Kids are terrifying now. They're the opposite of old people. They're too good with technology. Have you ever seen a 3-year-old on an iPad? It's terrifying. I think they're fucking with us. I honestly believe that. Because they're so good at the iPad and suck socially. They're just like, boop, 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 boop. And they look at you like, fuck you, I don't believe that. I just watched you do a bank transaction. Don't you Kaiser Soze me. Just put the money in my overseas account and I want to go up. Fuck you. You sticky-handed little liar. I do not trust you. You know what scares me the most about that generation? That's the generation that's going to have to defend us against China. Feel safe? Feel safe knowing that? Going to have a whole army in 20 years that's like, I would storm the beach, but I have a shellfish allergy. Feel comfortable knowing that? An entire military that can get wiped out with a bag of gluten?
That's right. That's Dan Soder. Seems pretty interesting to me. I was actually at Rumors last night. Thank you again, Rumors, for tickets. Myself and the father-in-law dropped by. And again, always surprising how amazing the acts are and how funny it is. That's at Rumors Comedy Club. Lifetime of history there down here in Winnipeg. So please make sure you get down. And Dan Soder will be featuring on September 28th through 30th. And you check the show notes, you're going to be able to find a link for the tickets. And again, continuing on our trend about introducing you to other podcasts that are out there. Well, today the podcast that I'd like to take a second and introduce you to goes by the name of Rusted Robots. And I mean, seriously, who doesn't like robots? We all grew up with them, right? That's right. Could be about the Autobots. In all seriousness, though, the Rusted Robot is actually done by another couple of Canadians. They explore the geek worlds of Star Trek, Babylon, anything that could possibly involve a robot or robot-type item in it. So interesting mix of humor, chemistry, and quirkiness. thoroughly encourage you to check them out. And they were gracious enough to send us a promotion. So here you are. Buckle up and listen to Rusted Robot.
Hi, this is Admiral Adama.
My name's Robert J. Sawyer.
This is Cena Grace.
Hey, this is Stephen Amell.
Hey, this is Dr. Trek, Larry Nemechek.
I'm hanging with Sean and Bridget. They're telling all about general geekery.
And you are listening to the Rusted
Robot
Podcast.
The #1 rated robot-related podcast.
Northern Ontario.
You should be following them on Twitter.
Keep listening.
Don't forget to follow them on Twitter.
Subscribe on iTunes.
TheRustedRobot.podbean.com.
The Rusted Robot Podcast. Think about it.
Rusted Robot.
Never go wrong with robots, right? So I encourage you again to check them out. I've given one of their episodes a listen. These guys are up to 165 episodes. They are knocking it out of the park and have been around for a while, and nothing says something about quality like the longevity of a program. So again, I encourage you to check it out. Well, today's episode came about as a result because I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, and he had an astrophysicist on there by the name of Sean, and they were talking about a documentary, I guess you could call it, called What the Bleep Do We Know? This was mentioned on there a couple times, so I thought an interesting experience would be Mike and I to grab a couple beers, a couple more beers, and a couple beers after that. And we were going to give it a watch, and then we fired up the microphone, and we gave our thoughts, our insights. And of course, the documentary itself drove us to a couple other different but related topics. Also excited to say that we had a special guest pop in and provide a few insights into the show. So you will hear Wendy on the show for the first time. But overall, I found it really interesting. Of course, pounded down a few beers, and we would love to get your insight, your thoughts on the show. So, folks, I hope you sit back, again, grab your favorite frosty beverage, enjoy, and I hope you love the next episode of Musing While Boozing. Take care.
Musing while boozing, because the best thinking happens while drinking. Hot topics over cold drinks.
Here we are, live again.
Episode 4.
Episode 4, the adventure continues. And what's on the docket for today? What was the name?
I don't even know what the name of that movie was. What the Bleep?
Yes. What the Bleep.
What the Bleep what?
In a continuation of our analysis of a couple of different documentaries. One came up in a podcast the other day. And actually, the other day, it was this morning. I was listening to a Joe Rogan, and he had Sean something or other from episode 1003 on, astrophysicists, and he talked about the controversy that was caused by the documentary / fantasy science fiction film, we'll get more on that, called What the Bleep Do We Know? So I shot a text to Mike and said, hey, tonight, why don't we take a crack at this and see what it was all about.
Now, just to let you know, there was actually 2 versions of this movie.
Yes.
One in 2004 and one in 2006.
The 2006 being the extended DVD release. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, based on Pirate Bay's results, we watched the extendo mix.
Yes, extendo mix.
Of What the Bleep Do We Know? Should also go on record that sitting silently beside us, we are no longer alone in this evening's podcast. We do have another special guest, and I say special with the dearest part of my heart, sitting silently in the corner with a smile on her face and a grin that won't stop.
Part of the laugh box, I guess.
Yes, our laugh track for this evening. Joining us, vision therapist extraordinaire, Miss Wendy Warner. Wendy, why don't you say hi to the audience out there?
Hi, Amy.
Yes, Wendy's here to add her comments in at the appropriate post. So, in all seriousness, we watched this documentary / fantasy film, and I can see why they added that in the Wikipedia explanation from front to back. And I'll say, without knowing anything about what it was about.
Well, what did you give the overview already?
Well, no, but I'm going to say it was not what I expected.
Yeah.
Why don't you hit the folks out there with what the official overview of this is in 50 words or less?
So apparently this movie went to the box office, 16 million US.
Okay. What's it about?
Amanda, a divorced photographer, has a fantastic experience when life begins to unravel around her, revealing the cellular, molecular, and quantum worlds that lie beneath everything. That's it.
Warning! Warning! Bullshitter alert! Bullshitter alert! Warning! Warning!
As you might expect,
alert!
we already have some reservations about this movie.
Well, yeah, I went in thinking it was a documentary. And okay, they told this story in, a documentary / film-esque movie type scenario, and that's fine. I can the format I can live with, and if they wanted to add actors for production value and stuff, that's fine. What really got to me though was the actual subject matter itself, and it contained my all-time favorite topic, pseudoscience. Pseudoscience, the gap that fills every non-intellectual's heart when they're looking for meaning in life, and they like big words.
Oh, do they love big words?
Yeah, this
makes them seem smart.
Well, it makes them seem smart, or it allows you to trust people who you think are smart. I mean...
yes, which brings us to the actors and actresses on this show.
Yeah, who was in this show?
Who was in this show? Not one scientist.
Well, yeah, and if you check the Wikipedia page, it even talks about how the scientists they did quote said their quotes were taken, out of context or they were misrepresented.
Yeah.
Which I think is also a big part, where they told a story, and I guess we should really start with an overview. So what was their story? In a nutshell, my take on it, I'll go first.
Hold on here. So
okay.
I'm just taking a look here. There's 11 people in this movie.
Yeah, there was.
3 of them have nothing on them, so I think this movie was them.
Yeah.
And the rest are actresses and actors.
Yeah, it was a different take, but okay, granted. So they use.
Okay, so
they use actors.
You got to remember this is a decade ago, right?
Yeah, 2004. This came out
when we used big names and big words to impress people.
Well, I think this again pointed out the fact that pseudoscience can be dangerous. It's something that bugs me. I think we've reached a point in human history where people. It's almost where knowing too much can be dangerous because you know a little bit about a lot. And so people, for the first time in the history of mankind, have the ability to grab little bits of information, convince themselves that, you know what? With my 15 minutes of research and maybe half a book, I know more than people who, in the past, if you want to talk science... There was a guy in a white lab coat and you talked science. If you wanted to talk religion, you went and talked to a priest. If you wanted to talk to whatever. And that's not saying anybody can't.
What about the doctor who was the guy in the coat and he was smoking a cigarette?
Well, yeah. Oh. But the fact being is that it's not so you can't talk to them about their profession, but there became a conceit in the last, probably since the internet, where people think that they know more than the profession. That, you know what? I can read 5 articles, click 6 links, and...
I don't think it's they think they know more. I think they think the internet knows more.
Well, yeah, because of blurring the line between people and the internet.
Yeah. Collective consciousness. See, I can throw up big words too,
Yeah.
I sound smart.
There is a Deepak Chakra quote generator that if you're ever bored, I suggest people Google it. It was mentioned today, and I checked it out at work for 5 minutes, and you can sound like a holy son of a bitch who knows a lot about yoga. Just by typing in 4 random words in your thoughts, and it'll give you an awesome quote that is apparently absolutely meaningless.
I've done yoga.
Oh.
Can't tell you any of the positions I did because I can't really pronounce them.
Yeah. I've tried yoga and I've learned I'm not bendy. But, Wendy, what are your thoughts on yoga? Okay, here comes our last track. Wendy just finished a soccer game with the Reds and her face is currently red. But in all seriousness, again, so Mike.
So now are we gonna give our rating before or after?
Well, I don't know about the rating. I wanted to get your thoughts as you watched it because Mike and I were watching it. And we jotted down some things as we're going through this because again, we went in thinking it was, I went in thinking it was a documentary that was on science that I'd heard about, like that had caused some controversy by scientists. I didn't realize that it was so, I don't know what the word is, woohooey.
I went in thinking of a scientific movie, scientific base to some extent.
It was very fuzzy.
I would have to give it a 0 on that credential because there was really no science there. There was a lot of words thrown in there.
They would start every sentence with science and then jump off. So it would tell you about how cells work.
Yes.
And then it mentioned that each cell has its own consciousness.
We talk about manifested energy, avatars, matter versus antimatter. Oh yeah, they love these words. It's
well, yeah. I mean, if you look at my notes, and just a bunch of question marks that I wrote everywhere. But it would some of even the pseudo facts it put out there. For instance, let's talk about one that came out that we had a little conversation during the thing, and that's the fact that they were talking about how, and I guess the gist of this movie is the fact that how your emotions can affect the universe. And on a slant, that's true. Your affections are going to your affections are going to affect your interaction with the universe, because obviously you have a positive attitude, you get more positive interactions. A negative attitude, you're going to have negative interactions. But of course, they took it to the actual metaphysical level, right? They said that the brain waves, or they
said our perception influenced reality, and that reality wasn't real.
Yeah, it was purely your subjective interpretation. The reality didn't exist until you looked at it.
Yes,
that's what they talked about.
Oh, it's very deep.
It was very. They said reality.
I said agreed, not that deep.
They said that everything.
See, I just heard what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, that's right. That was your reality in the corner of the couch there.
And it also talked about the fact that your eyes only, and this is where we thought of you, Wendy, your eyes only see what your brain allows it to see.
Correct. Your eyes don't see anything.
Right.
It transmits and collects information, and your brain processes.
And it's only so much information.
Exactly.
And your processing of the visual information is based on experience and history and what you've lived. And you look for what you want to see.
But that's where they started with the actual science.
They have a good idea.
That was we agreed with that.
There's some pieces in there.
But then they took it. Then they jumped off a cliff, hanging onto that balloon. That nugget of truth, that infinitesimal piece.
Yeah, I got it jotted right here. Reality equals awareness, environment, paradigm. Yes.
They did a lot of that, just saying random words. And you're looking at each other going, and that's truly what they said. And I went to Mike going...
The brain doesn't differentiate dreams versus reality.
Yes.
Okay, I get it.
Well, remember when they taled about the...
Heisenberg says particle can be in two places at once. Well, that's it. And then they bastardized that, and they...
Yes,
but isn't that the truth of visualization? Like any good athlete visualizes themselves carrying out the perfect shot or making the perfect save. And science has proven that if you visualize the actions, your muscles actually learn the movement equally or better than actually trying and doing the movement, because it's all brain powered.
But they only interview the winner, and the other 9 guys that train just as much and go to sports psychologists too, who visioned winning, didn't win. So 9 people on the court of 10. Point. But that was their point, was that if you visualize it, what do you say about walking on water?
Oh, that's my favorite part.
Oh my goodness.
If we believe 100%,
more than
it
just
will be reality.
So you could walk on water.
I could walk on water. Yes. But he's saying that we don't actually... Positive thinking is not 100% belief.
You must believe
it's
deeper.
A smear on the negative thought.
That's right.
We're not actually capable at this point, or many people, being 100% positive.
Like, of course...
But there's a difference between reciting an action in your mind and actually walking through it in your mind's eye. There's a big difference.
For sure, you have to commit to it. But if you have 3 people equally committed to a result, you can't all 3 go in their favor.
So like the best part of this though is how they take it to the next level.
But then
they say you can walk on water, and quantum physics states that this is the creation of reality that we've done. It agrees with that. I'm like, it does, but not in that way. Like it
kept saying that your brain waves can affect your interactions with people. Well, it's your brainwaves to the point of your brain, you deciding or living, or whether it's chemically or not, the emotion that you're emitting is going to interact with people and cause a difference in your action. So let's, for example, say the fact that either there's two scenarios. One, you're going to meet someone and you're high as a kite, and one, you're going to meet someone and you're stone sober and incredibly upset because your dog died the day before. Guess what? Yes, your interactions are going to be different, but it wasn't you projecting astral brainwaves from your house before you went out. It's the fact that you are in a altered state.
Altered.
So yes, well, but that's just it. But their point being, you can just change your brainwaves by altering your state. So just decide to be happier, I guess, then you'll be happier. That's fine. But they were saying you could physically manifest things.
Yes. They took it to a whole new level there.
Well, they cited a couple of, one that I knew was previously debunked, and the author came forward and said it was debunked. But there was a Japanese scientist, Emoto. He got 15 minutes of fame because he was the one that took, allegedly by him, bottles of water and wrote happy on the water, and then took an electron microscope picture of the water and wrote sad on the water, and then, visually
emanated some kind of
thought at this glass of water for half an hour. And
which it did happen. Like, this is a real...
Then he took pictures, and he was showing that this was it before I thought, and this was it after. Well, what they didn't talk about here was, I don't know if I wrote that quote down, but what he ended up says on page 126 of his book is the fact that, well, the pictures that I show here in my book, sometimes fantasy is the best representation you can have of truth. In other words, he
made it up.
Took a picture. The picture didn't show exactly what he thought, so he thought the picture would have looked like this, and created a picture to show what he thought happy water should look like. He also, on a more scientific level, didn't admit or talk about the fact that a lot of his water had other substances in it, and that he only selected and picked what he said was the quote-unquote most beautiful pictures to represent what he was going after. Of course, that is never brought forward into the people that say, well, look, here's 3 pictures of water, here's one that was happy. The other one they talked about that really ground my gears, because this is one that we had learned a little bit about back in the day in school, was they said that in the city of Washington, which was the violent crime capital of the U.S., they brought in thousands of people who were meditators, and they all sat around at Washington Square and meditated over a weekend.
And dropped the crime rate.
And dropped the violent crime rate by 25%. And guess what? The violent crime rate, because violent crime rate is just a big category of crime, right? Mm-hmm. It's not one typical act, did drop by a measurable percentage. Within that violent crime rate, we didn't talk about this, but I had to refresh myself. Murders, which is one capital, murders were up 22%. So I guess it was okay that they thought that, physical assault or, fights in a bar went down. But the fact is that murders themselves, people actually getting killed, went up that weekend. But violent crime, which tells you exactly how much stats mean. You can make them literally say anything. Yeah. But yes, so violent crime went down by 25%. But people actually getting killed by other human beings, which they don't mention, went up by 22%.
I've learned numbers can be whatever you want them to be.
Yes.
It just depends on what the right questions being asked. Some of the gray areas
became more
black
and white for some people.
Yes.
Maybe the people that were wavering and they're like, should I do this? Is this the right decision?
And the ones that wanted to went all out.
Yeah.
They committed. They affected their reality through their brainwaves and said, you know what? That bitch is dying today.
That was another point they brought up. There is no right and wrong.
Oh, yeah. They talked a lot about there is no right and wrong. Don't get... No. There is just the fact that you're here to improve. And sometimes you may do things to improve that aren't great. Sometimes you... But as long as you're improving, you're okay. Good, yes. You know what I say to that? Exactly.
You don't like that, eh?
No. It's a whole pseudoscience forum. You gotta be careful because Wendy might jump across the table. But it's not even just things like this. It's
we need to move beyond our perceptions, our feelings, definition of reality.
Yeah,
it's just
I thought they were going to go into God, and what they went into God. Well, they did. They said everybody's a God. You're a god. I'm a god.
They
everybody's
said
a god.
that God, we were imbeciles basically for defining God,
Yes, that we were-
and then suggesting that God would judge us on two simple merits: good, bad.
Yeah, the fact is that they said we were all gods, and God, because we all have the power to be like a god. Which, you know what, was, in a way, one of the most enlightened things I've heard somebody say. Because, yeah, okay, great, there's no God. But then what they did is they went right down to the fact that we had powers beyond the physical, saying that every cell in your body has its own unique consciousness, just because they all have protein receptors on them.
Yes. Again, that's just taking
What's
it.
your definition of consciousness?
Well, you know what it's not?
Yeah, it's
I
not
didn't
that.
ask you what it's not. What is your definition of consciousness?
Well, that's a really great question.
That's something that I got to think about that. I can't just answer that off the top of my head.
I think my definition of conscious involves or is really based on something involving the fact of an entity being self-aware. To be aware of self, to realize that you are an entity onto yourself, to be able to make decisions and stuff. So, for instance, that's one of the biggest issues having around with like AI right now. People, we're so far away from having an AI in some ways that is self-aware. The step we've taken, though, is that we've actually.
I think the worry is that the machines are going to learn very quickly and become self-aware.
Well,
Terminator. Dun, dun,
well, on that note, though, I mean.
If you fear AI...
No, I'm not saying I fear it. Although I think you should, but I don't...
Because it may become self-aware and may act in your definition of consciousness, then how can a cell not have some sort of consciousness if AI is built?
That's actually one of the arguments they said in the movie.
Oh, and we haven't got there yet, that's what I'm saying. But to be self-aware, which...
Pardon me.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, I don't...
This, you know what? I like to buy into a lot of these movies. I like to buy into all these kind of thoughts.
I was excited to be more controversial than it was, and it wasn't.
Yeah, even I couldn't buy into this. I'm sorry.
Yeah. If Mike couldn't get on the train, this train wasn't leaving the station, let me tell you.
I think he's just uncomfortable with the trend.
No, well, they did have some good points to start with.
Yes.
But then they took the hocus pocus and jumped off a cliff every time.
They couldn't justify Jack. That's the problem, right? And so they'd veer off and they'd throw... This is what I mean. They'd throw out big words and
not that we didn't know what the big words were, but they would just literally spout nonsense sometime. Another area that sort of... I guess it wasn't the film itself, it's what the film represented that really, in the end, started to grind my gears, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was...
I'm actually a little bit angry.
Well, don't, because your feelings are going to manifest themselves, and then the car outside is going to burst into flames, because it can sense your cosmic interaction.
My red aura.
Yes. They also had little cartoons like that movie from Disney to represent your emotions, like red and blue and whatever.
Yeah.
So when this girl was getting all horned up, the little red things were sliding down her pants and onto the dance floor at the Polish wedding.
I think those were actually edibles. That's what I saw.
That's what we felt like.
I saw there was a lot of edibles.
And yes, episode 4, we're back on the edibles. It's just never changed. Small update, haven't made it to the doctors yet. That'll be the trip when we get back from our trip.
Yeah, get on that. So sooner the better.
Yeah, it's definitely a priority. Sorry, I keep going back to this because it was really
because it was angry.
Well, talked about again. This is filling a need for people that feel like they just don't have a purpose, and the fact that we could get a purpose by. What was their point in the movie? I tried to summarize at the end.
Are you not filling a need by doing your podcast?
Well, that's fine, but that's tangible.
Yeah.
This
is really tough to define. I don't
was that you should live your life.
Well, okay, first of all...
To learn lots and live a good life, which again, there's nothing wrong with that statement at all. I'm not upset with their end result. I'm talking about how they got there. they pretended like it was based in science, and it truly wasn't. It's so funny how this movie is so hard to summarize because there was literally 10-minute segments in it.
There wasn't anything. Okay, so was it a scientific movie?
Well, no. It wasn't a documentary.
Like, I can't even...
And time out. So there's pseudoscientists who are creating these documentaries, whether it's this or whether it's anything else, I can't even call this mainstream, but, this or like, What the Health, or Ancient Aliens, or anything that has a...
Don't offend me, man. We'll get to that show later on.
Anything as a quote-unquote expert, you'd think if they're going to put them and try to sell their image in front of people who are more mainstream, and you're trying to convince them about your ideas or introduce people or enlighten them, which this movie seems a lot to enlighten. God damn, give them a dress code.
Like, I don't know, man. Do you know any of these people? Marley Matlin?
Yeah, she was the deaf and dumb girl from West Wing, the reporter.
Okay, so some of these people, John Ross Bowie.
No, but I'm talking about the characters they portrayed. So every time they had, look at the guy that was in the tie-dye shirt, or the girl wearing the tie-dye with the Star Trek emblem on it.
He was wearing the Star Trek emblem.
So are you saying that someone that is well-dressed...
That was Elaine Hendricks.
Their views should be taken more seriously than someone that
Should
tie-dyes their cotton?
I'm not saying they should. I'm saying they are. And if you have to package your material to your consumer. So if you are going to a patchouli concert and you're going to go and hang out with a whole bunch of stoners and acid heads and what have you and have a great time all weekend, you're going to interact with people that are comfortable in that culture. You're not going to wear a suit and tie. No. Probably. 1 out of 1,000 might. They may show up after work. That's fine. But you're going to dress in such a way that you're going to be able to interact with the people around you. The point of this packaging of this material, and just like anything else is the fact that don't start off with what can sound like a decent idea, and then when you lead up to and have an expert sitting there on the TV or the screen or whatever to present your ideas to an audience that is probably not in the same culture as you are, don't have them present with crazy hair, dressed in...
Don't diss out that guy, man. I swear to God, I will come back to you.
Yes, Ancient Aliens.
It'll come back to you.
No, it's...
When I go to Raise No Frills, I'll buy the butter in the yellow package because it costs less, but I know it's butter.
And don't you fret
I don't buy the fancy butter with the lady on it just because it looks like somebody put more effort into the package.
Do you...
The consistency... is the same.
But we're not talking about butter. Butter's consumed in the same way. Yes. How do you dress for work?
This information is consumed in the same way.
Are you ever concerned with how you're dressed for work and the image you may portray as a therapist? Have you ever asked me, is this too tight? Is this too revealing? I don't want to distract my clients. Yes.
Yes.
You know why? Because you don't want your message to get lost in your outfit. That is the point. You need to present yourself in such a way that your message isn't being lost.
You, Mike.
If I look at someone who looks like he's been up all night staring at UFOs, and he's trying to present me that there may be something out there, that isn't the type of guy that's going to convince me that he has credibility. Just like you wouldn't show up in Lululemon tights and a low-cut sports bra and deal with 13-year-old boys, because you would think that that is maybe slightly illegal, and also, but more importantly, because you could tone that down a bit, but you wouldn't want to be distracted. You would want to present your way that you're going to provide credibility to your message. My point is this, is that if I was directing if I was a director and I was tasked with making this movie, the experts I would have put on screen would have looked the part of someone who's now talking to someone who may be a little skeptical, but you know what? That looks like a guy I could trust. It's packaging, but I'm talking about the fact that if you're trying to market your product, use marketing. This is a pet peeve of mine. Every pseudoscience show out there, when they get to the crux of, and now let's go to Dr. Venkman and talk about this, looks like a guy who has 50 cats, his hair's all crazy, he slept in a ditch.
But you're proving their point.
Which is what?
70% of your brain is used for vision, right? You are basing your opinions on your visual input. Yet you're saying that perspective and the way you see things doesn't alter a reality, when in fact it completely does. Because if they had dressed differently, if you had seen them differently, you would have accepted the message differently.
Oh, I'm not arguing the fact that your perception doesn't perceive reality. Again, my argument here was when they took that and then took it to a whole new level. I'm saying it would make me a lot more receptive to the entire product if they didn't have someone who 70% of their message is getting distracted by the fact that they don't look like they know what they're talking about. Or they're dressing to the cliche. Or that girl was wearing a Star Trek uniform.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was everything. She basically had the color, the stripes, everything, except for the emblem, because then that'd be copyright.
But she had like a little gold cat or something on her chest.
Yeah.
There was something on there.
What if this wasn't a podcast?
You know what
and
she
this was
reminded me?
whatever you call a video thing.
I'll post the pictures.
How would your message be construed?
It would look exactly like what it sounds. As far as I'm concerned, we are not trying to.
In your mind.
No, we look like
Based
two guys drinking beer on the couch.
Your perspective.
And we sound like two guys drinking beer on the couch. We're not sitting here dressed in suits.
I'm going to tell you
right
now.
At a boardroom.
Elaine Hendricks looked like Deanna Troi from Star Trek. She was dressed that way. It made me feel like she kind of knew what was going on, but really, not once in the movie did they actually introduce who any of these people were. Not once did they list credits. Not once did they list any kind of... There's nothing there. Like
they did use a lot of quotes like, numerous science experiments say, and that, this has been proven many times, and then say something completely radical with no reference points. There's no show notes. There's nothing about the fact that this...
There's no... Oh my God. It's painful even to kind of describe this because it's just so bad.
Yeah. But, yeah, I don't want to say there was redeeming points. Again, they did start a lot of concepts in grounded fact. And they would mention what quantum theory was. But they ignored whole... Oh. So they would say that based on quantum theory and your ability to be in two places at the same time and that all these unlimited possibilities, that just by deciding on a certain area you could affect... They ignored quantum entanglement. There's
quantum entanglement. Oh yes, big words.
The fact that you do interact with the universe and that when you observe something, your act of observing is what causes the difference, not your intention to observe. And that's a key... They said it was your intent to look at something that changes something, and not the physical act of doing so. And not looking as in looking with your vision, but, on the intercellular level, your interaction with something is what causes that something to change direction. That's what does it. It's not from across a room or in another room, just the waves from your brain changing the physical attributes of something. I mean,
it's crazy.
It was very similar to, the...
no wonder they said we all could be gods.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, because if I could do
powers,
that, I would. It's like that, the Secret book. Have you ever read that or looked into The Secret?
Book?
Well,
outside
book,
of
movie.
I
don't know if there was ever a movie on it.
Textbook?
But essentially, if you believe it, it'll happen. If you believe it, it'll happen. And again, there are aspects of that are great. Yes, if you have a positive outlook on life... Yes. You're going to perceive things more positively. So at the end of the day, it's your perception of your life that's the only thing that counts. So, yeah, positive things will happen. You'll be able to accept the negative in an easier way and move on. But to tell someone, and there was a great interview I was listening to today about the fact that, Joe Rogan had met this girl a few years ago, and, she cornered him at a house party, and it's like, oh, yeah, and she just, heard about The Secret, and to make this long story short, he saw her 2 years ago. She was utterly confused. She's like, I don't understand. I believe things would get better. My husband's still an asshole. I haven't got a promotion, but I believed it every morning. And, well, what are you doing about it? But she just, the act of, the physical act, you can call it that, of sitting there and believing something, which I think is a great first step.
I think
you can't do something without believing it. But to think that you can make something happen just in quotes, bold letters, underlined, just by thinking it, flies in the face of anything to do with the physical universe.
You actually sound like a business person when you say those kind of things. we don't want to hear the negative. We want to hear the positive. We want to hear,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's a great start. But
I have no problems.
But you got to act.
I
honest.
personally try to, like, people are at work, you're always so positive, If I'm going to be negative, I do it privately. Yes, because I think that there is no place in business, really, to show a negative emotion, outburst, that type of stuff. But that doesn't mean that everything I want to have happens. Doesn't mean that every sales don't always go up every month because I believe they should. Guess what? Sometimes something out of your control happens. We were very positive about going on this trip, and we haven't even got to Hurricane Irma yet. And guess what? It has positively fucked up our plans. The island of, when I was getting dinner tonight, the island of Barbamba or whatever. It is. It's literally. It's
very close. It's
Bermuda.
Sorry, yeah.
Which is apparently just 7 letters over from Bermuda.
Yeah.
1,650 people used to live there. The island no longer exists. 98% of the buildings on the island were destroyed. They may never get power back.
Yes.
Every infrastructure, the one power generator they had, everything is gone. I'm sure there was at least one person on that island that was praying. And didn't they say that you could affect water with positive thoughts?
Yes, they did.
And isn't a hurricane
saw
basically
a drawing.
100% water?
I saw a drawing.
You are jumping to conclusions.
But that's what they do. It was...
Or more importantly, aren't human bodies 90% water?
Yes.
And you
98.3 actually.
control your body.
You can physically change it.
That's what this movie says.
Never seen...
It kind of sounds like maybe Marvel's going to take this over and do a little series on it. Maybe is there a superhero that has this kind of?
I'm sure there is.
I think there is too.
Need Kelly Cassidy to come on the podcast here and discuss this with us. But it was frustrating when they would take but that's the basis of all pseudoscience. They start with something that has generic scientific principles, and then they add some mystery to it.
Yes.
Then
But there wasn't...
They repackage it in a way that provides hope.
Yes.
And then they present it to you as an easily digestible alternative to reality.
But I usually believe these things, and I just wasn't... wasn't taken.
I also think you've grown a lot in the last 20 years.
No.
Yes. No. I think your conspiratorial days may be behind you.
Whoa! No. Let's not go there quite yet. We'll get into that.
We did get our first request through the podcast channels to cover alien abductions and government conspiracies, because if there was something in the past that would get Mike fired up, it was alien abductions and government conspiracies. But
that's another episode. That's a long
ship
time.
Might have sailed. And speaking of ships, on this random tidbit of information in the show, it talked about the fact that the Native Americans, when Columbus came, and this is where Wendy will provide some insight, was what they said was that allegedly, according to the movie, that Columbus showed up in his ships in the bay, and the Native Americans couldn't see the ships.
Just the waves.
They literally just saw waves going against the ships, and a shaman, their holy man, for days stared at the waves and wondered if the waves were stopping at a certain point in the water, and then he could see the ships because the idea of a ship didn't exist in their mindset. So they literally didn't physically see it, and then once he pointed it out to his tribe, suddenly they could magically see it because someone they trusted pointed out into the bay and said, "Look at that," and they said, "Oh my goodness, there's something there." So I had to look into it a little bit, and this totally twisted. And what it was according to, and we're talking about 500 years ago, so but little notes at the time, was that they looked up and didn't see a perceived threat because they couldn't interpret what the ships are. That makes sense.
Yes.
If you see something you don't understand, some people consider it a threat, some people don't. I think that's...
Yeah, but that's essentially what you said the first time.
That was their perception.
Vision is a learned behavior.
But they couldn't see it.
And if somebody is born without vision, given vision later in life, it isn't like, oh, hey, that's what that door frame looks like. you have to learn how to interpret the information that your brain is receiving.
Right.
And so without like exploring or being there or being able to explore their brain, you can't for sure know what they perceived. And
Well,
you're right. The way you said it the second way makes more sense to you.
Yes. It makes totally sense. I can believe that they looked at something and didn't see a perceived threat, so ignored it. But not that they physically couldn't see the shapes in the water until someone pointed out that there was something floating in the water. That they couldn't differentiate the difference in the... I'm going to use the word pixels, it's not right. But the difference in color hitting their eyeballs, going to their brain. Their brain didn't notice that it wasn't just blue sky and turquoise marine water, that there was a unknown shape there. They're saying that because that didn't exist in their brain, they couldn't physically see it. Physically see it. Not understand it, not interpret it. Physically see it.
Which again, the idea...
You do have to learn a door frame.
People say there's a lot of things that are, around us all the time.
Which the idea is right.
They say that some people have more intensified vision than most of the population, and they can perceive more colors. Right. And they can perceive more depth.
But then because their shaman pointed out and said, oh, look, there's something there, and they trusted it, and then suddenly they could see it. Because the emotions in their brain opened up, and now we can see it. I call bullshit.
It was like that episode on X-Files.
Oh,
Cerulean Blue.
Okay, I'm going
Cerulean Blue.
Cerulean Blue.
Good night.
We will devote a whole episode with Wendy on the topic of vision therapy, and I'm really excited about that. But when it comes down to the idea of again the docu theatrical interpretation of what the bleep.
So it was a scientific movie. 1 out of 5. I would give it like 1. Because it had some ideas in there. Didn't really justify, explain, prove. It was bastardized science, but nevertheless, they mentioned some scientific things outside of what you would normally see.
Well, they started a lot of segments with science. I'll give them that.
I hate to say it. Was this a spiritual movie?
Well, I think...
Which is way out of my realm.
I think they really tried to move into the spiritual realm. I think they really tried to move in... I don't even spirit, because they don't believe in spirits.
No.
It was...
I think it... You know what I think it was?
It
was an inspirational movie.
Right, which again...
Which was full of a lot of happy-go-lucky ideas.
Not a bad thing. It's okay to be inspirational. Just don't lie to people about doing it.
Yeah.
That's the whole point against religion. I mean, it's a bunch of fake stories meant to feel better. Well, it's nothing wrong with feeling better.
Which they actually did. They agree with you in the movie there.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was so... That's what was so frustrating about it. But the whole idea of pseudoscience is what pissed me off, because, this is something that... It's the only thing on the internet that gets fired me up. When I see things like people talking about, you can fix... what's that called? Down syndrome or something by giving your kids like bleach enemas, or the whole anti-vaccination thing.
Anti-vaccination is a prime example.
Or the fact that fucking coconut oil can fix the world, and then just because they see one article, and it's something that they agree with, it's something that gives them hope, that strikes a chord with them, whatever, and it's actually like there's going to be a study done in the next 15 years. That's going to talk about the mortality. It's already started. The mortality rate, for vaccinations, that people are going to die more because this is affecting so many people. Just purely the fact that because we've decided, we as being a segment, a place to say, you know what, I know more. I forget the fact that things like the Spanish flu used to kill 20 million people a year.
Montezuma's revenge.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that we're going to take this and we're going to take this idea and I'm going to interpret it in my life, and you can go 5 minutes in it before I end the post, say, I know more than you know your body more than your doctor because you're feeling it. No one knows your body more than you in terms of how it feels, but guess what? Odds are someone else knows better how it functions. Now,
do you know also, I think the doctor, that is starting to affect our that profession, because now you can walk into a doctor and pretty much tell them what you want and away they go.
Oh.
Without Very little arguing, very little, yeah, sure, whatever. It's easiest. That's the easiest thing. Let's just do that.
They're human. They don't want to argue with you.
No, they want, just like everyone else, they just want to put the check on and get paid,
Like
did my thing.
85%, or I think we mentioned like first, of all opiate painkillers consumed in the world are consumed in North America.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have 85% of the world's pain?
Yes, we do.
No.
God damn. I'm in pain right now, man.
But we probably have, honestly, a lot less than other places that don't have access to healthcare, right? So, but the thing is the fact that, we walk in, we tell our doctors what they want. And not that doctors give in, but at the end of the day...
But there's various factors.
Yeah, they're going to believe you, they're going to whatever, you go see another doctor, and you can get that prescription. It's because of the fact that, we think we know more. And the doctor's going to be like, yeah, okay, well, fine. If this is what you're going to make you believe that you're going to feel better, then I'll write you the prescription. Send you on your way. And
sometimes they monitor you, sometimes not.
Yeah, and not that, opiates, well, I can mitigate. Opiates are incredibly dangerous. It's one of the reasons why I have no interest in using them anymore. But the fact is that it starts there, and then it goes on to things like, well, then, you know what? Based on a bunch of tiny little things that I heard and read on the internet, I'm not going to vaccinate my children. You know what? Because of tiny things in it, I'm going to anally inject something else. I'm going to... And enough people believe this. Like, I'm worried that the next generation, the mortality rate can actually be higher.
Yes.
Yeah, because...
What do you believe now? Because there's so much stuff out there that a lot of them have... Just like this movie, right?
Yeah.
If they threw some credits on you and some credentials, Well,
obviously it didn't catch on that much, because here we are 13 years later. Before today, neither one of us has ever heard of what they're saying.
No,
so, but the concept of it, it's not just this. There is 1,000 other videos and 5-minute, worse yet, 5-minute, easily consumable blurbs passed on by BuzzFeed and Deepak Chopra and that fucking avocado guy,
yes,
who's
avocado.
The bane of my existence, David Avocado Wolf, who sends 16 little innocuous things, and then, by the way, buy my water that is something to do with gravity, gravity's like a myth or whatever. This is like anti-gravity water, and I'm probably butchering that, to be honest. But if Google David Avocado Wolf and gravity, you'll see something he has for sale. Do it right now. Pull it up, Mike. Do David Avocado Wolf or David Wolf Gravity, and you're going to see something come up here that he sells on his website. But I don't know what the guy's pulling down per year, but it's hundreds of millions of dollars based on the
David Wolf Flat World. David Wolf.
Oh yeah, he also has a flat Earth. Did you see where NASA has gotten so sick and tired of people talking about the fake moon landing that this week they released over 120,000 photos and said, here's everything we took. We've declassified everything. Really, at this point, we think it's fine, but go to hell. We went to the moon. And there are people who just genuinely believe that we didn't go to the moon, that it was faked. I'm like, seriously? You watch the rocket go up. You know how much it weighs. You can't slow down until it hits the moon. I mean, it's simple math to prove that we can be on the moon. The fact that now anybody can go out there by telescope and you can actually see distinguishing features on the moon that we put there. But did you find what I was talking about yet?
Oh yeah. David Wolf.
Yeah, David Wolf. And
he
believes mushrooms are from space.
Yeah, he looks like a guy
is an
that
octave of the sun, and deer antler is a cosmic substance, a product he promotes and sells. He has expert stringing words together in ways that look superficially as though it means something. He's also a flat earther, and he denies gravity. He says, and I quote, "Gravity is not intrinsic to matter." Okay, I gotta stop right there. Every physics equation we do is based on the opposite, but whatever.
That's our perception.
Carl Sagan idea that was sold to us on Cosmos and PBS was sold to us delivery to actually confuse us. Just so you know that. There are people who have known that gravity is a force that can be displaced. There's people that have known that since the 50s, or even earlier than that, so just the last 50 years. But by screwing up, confusing our minds with things, and giving us incorrect theories, we were brainwashed into a totally different belief system. That gravity is intrinsic to all matter. We're fighting gravity. We have to push our way through gravity to launch a craft into space. This is all nonsense. He believes that gravity is a toxin, and by turning yourself on your head, you can turn gravity into a cure for arthritis.
Positive thinking, right?
Yeah, well, positive thinking.
This is another...
And worse yet, not even just thinking it, the fact that the one of 2 or 3 constants in the universe is killing.
This guy is he's a threat to youth.
Well,
threat to the future of this world.
Yes,
like,
but
that kind of
he has
propaganda is...
excuse the cliche, but he has every housewife on the planet brainwashed. And then he shares a bunch of cute little pictures of kittens or something where inspirational meetings. And then every 10th or 12th one, the guy's brilliant. Then he goes and tries to sell deer antlers or anti-gravity water. And they buy it up. And he talks about how bad commercialism is. And then he sells this stuff. And he's selling tens of millions of dollars worth of this hooey. And...
Well, he's filling a need that needs to be filled, right?
He's filling a need. That's what pseudoscience does.
That's exactly what it does.
Easily consumable, easily packageable, sounding like it's smarter than you and makes you feel smarter for believing in it. But it turns out to be the fact that it's not only is it retarded, it can be incredibly detrimental.
What's the old adage? If it's too good to be true, then it is.
Wow, don't even get there. The stuff you see people believe and share. And I mean, it's so funny because, you know, I spend more time on the internet than probably the average person. Don't get me wrong. And I love the idea of the access to information. But the scary part is there is no filter to what that information is.
Which, you know, again, what that filter used to mean was filtering good and bad content.
Yes, and now it's just
it's
the true freedom of speech. It is content, and you can consume it however you want, and buyer beware. But the thing is, I think people are losing their ability to beware.
Yes, they are.
It's like a brainwashing that goes on. So,
like back to this movie. Let's look at some of the ratings here. IMDb 5.3 out of 10. Top documentaries 6.6 out of 10. Yeah. Google users 72% like this movie. Now I know these are skewed numbers based, you know, they're not a random sample and all that, but ouch.
Oh, I mean, you can like it as entertainment. I mean, it's okay to watch something if you want to get upset, like because it talked about addiction, and some people do like. Some people like to be scared. Some people like to be upset. Some people do truly like to be. You know, in an
maybe for
state.
A true addict, this might have been a very enlightening movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, again,
just
talking about
addiction.
Yeah, there are ideas on addiction, and talking about the fact that, you know, you can cure addiction with your. I do believe, although you can take some things to physically mitigate, you know, the addictive properties to your body. At the end of the day, you have to truly decide if you want to stop or do something.
You better load us up here.
But the fact is that there's nothing magical about that process. There's nothing magical in terms of magic in the sense of unexplainable physical effects about your ability to so we are still abusing when we're moving, right? Your ability to affect the world through your brain waves.
I know. That's great.
So, you know, we'll keep going here, but...
Like, I want to believe that...
I know.
Jesus, I can't even believe this. Like,
well, it talked a little about... So, you know, Dwayne. Shout out to Dwayne Crest out there, who's want to talk about aliens. And this, listening to this... And you don't have to hear it, because we can have this conversation without it, but I can bring up some of the topics where it talked about, you know, this... the gentleman who was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and his name was, I'll have it right here.
Joe Rogan.
Oh no, Joe Rogan he runs the podcast, but
yes,
but he's the UFC guy. But he gets some amazing guests that are just there really to open up.
He was also Fear Factor too.
Yeah, same guy.
There's been quite a few.
Yeah.
He's had quite the career.
The fact is, he has He has Snoop Dogg coming up. But anyways, the gentleman's name is Sean Karl. He's a cosmologist and physics professor specializing in dark matter. So, I mean, this was a deep. But Joe asked the questions that every layman would want to know. When it got to things like, you know, talked a little bit about, you know, the why behind the universe and God and and Sean just puts it, he goes, it'd be pretty conceited to say that God created the 14 billion years of the universe existence, and for one small planet on one arm of one non-centrally located galaxy against a mediocre sun in one far wing in our infinitesimally small existence of time since we've become alive as human beings, and probably even if we expand like another 100,000 years, in the span of the universe can be so small that this was all created just for us.
I don't believe that, but you know what?
No,
the numbers.
You don't believe what? That it's not conceived to say that all this was created just for this sliver of people on one random planet in one galaxy, whatever.
What if it was just chance? I mean, I understand the numbers.
Well, no, that's what he's saying. It's just chance.
The numbers that we base these on, they're based on the factors that we perceive, what we perceive life requiring to exist. Which, okay, so again, we're looking for other life forms like ourselves,
or even just any other life forms.
No, that formula is only specific to life forms that are water based.
No, what he's saying though is the anti-science, saying that to think that a God created all of this just for our pleasure in this brief period of time, that's a little conceited.
Well, who would believe that?
Well, that's what people who are religious believe.
Oh, okay. Well, that's weird to me.
Yeah, that everything out there...
That's very weird to me.
And the 14 billion years of history was all created just to lead up, just so we can stare up in the heavens and wonder and find a purpose in our life and move on.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah,
right?
like it's...
Everybody's trying to answer that one question,
and this guy's answer was that the answer is there isn't an answer. You know, there's nothing wrong with living your life, and you should try to learn more about the universe and stuff, but that there isn't... That life is life.
Well, you know what the problem is it's our education system and all that have fed us to believe that there's always going to be something greater, shoot for the stars, kind of.
Well, he hit up on something that really made me wonder, which was, I mean, it was a really enjoyable podcast. I think it was one of the highest rated on iTunes last month, and it's the fact that he linked. I hope I can get this point across, but he linked because we were talking about AI, and the fact is that we may be able to create something by what every definition is called life. It's self-replicating and just it's another form of life down the road. But what would that life be like? Because a lot of human culture and human history is linked to the fact to our biological needs. You know, our need to have sex, our need to procreate, our need to...
It's just the culture, the ethics of society. You're talking about a major shift.
Well,
that's just a machine. You know,
yeah.
Even though it, by our definition, has its own intelligence, can recreate.
But what would human society be like if we get to the point where if we can say download our consciousness into a machine, and then the need to procreate is no longer there? What would we do? And then he extrapolated another step. Well, what if other aliens has gotten there? Would you feel the need to leave your planet and go exploring if you didn't need the extra space because you weren't procreating? He talked about the fact that if human beings ever conquer death, then what happens is we'll stop having kids because the people that are alive are going to live forever. And then what would we do? Well, if we're no longer needing to have sex and not that drive, then what's the point of
existing?
Well, or not even existing, but even going exploring. We could just stay here to the point where you could live in a virtual world that's just if not more mystifying than what is out there. So he talked about maybe there's aliens in some way, shape, or form that are quote unquote plugged into these worlds that are.
Maybe they're looking for new simulations.
Well, and he talked about the fact that the idea of a physical entity, i.e., little green men coming to Earth. Like, what do we do? We send drones. We send the Mars rover that goes, 50 million miles. He said the odds of another biological entity, if there is intelligent life coming here, is so. What we would do is we would find either, like a shrine on the moon, on another moon, or find a physical, a robot or a drone or a ship of some, call it what you want, something physical being sent into our solar system. Not the fact that it's really hard to move a biological problem. The distances are so big.
Yes, but again, you know what limits us from sending that Is it society limiting us? Is it society is everything's based on cost? Well, what if cost wasn't a factor? What if resource availability was the only thing that was preventing us from growing? Which really, there should be no resources. Resources should be unlimited.
If again, though, you can build a ship. I'm not saying, but the thing is, the fact that right now, his point was that the universe is so big, is that to send something physically, there's to keep that thing alive and all the resources required, regardless of what shape or form it is. Odds are, first, we would, and he says he believes more that we would see something physical if it's a complex ship or something that's just obviously artificial that was sent out into space. That makes more sense. So to see that like little green men have shown up in Idaho and alien intruded Elmer and his buddies, and we didn't see them coming and or leaving on radar, even though their ship has physical properties that we can see, and that these things had physical interactions with human beings. Yeah, that didn't happen.
Do we really want to get into this alien talk already?
Well, this all sort of flows together.
You know what? If they're coming here, they figured out how to travel through time and space.
Yeah.
They're on a different dimension.
Which is why
you can't perceive them.
Yeah, which is why we haven't seen them.
That's
because,
right. Because if they wanted to be seen, they'd be seen.
I read every book as a kid, and I was so in the aliens camp. And I guess that's evolved. So do I believe there is life out there? But the thing is, and I think as you get older, every 10 years a new realization hits you. The universe, we can't even quantify in our heads how long things have been in existence. Like if they're the current, only because I heard it 15 times today, the current agreed upon assessment plus or minus a couple of billion is that the universe, since the Big Bang-ish, has been about 14 billion years.
Yes.
Yeah. Considering dinosaurs were like
the largest lifespan on our planet.
Well, and that was only 68 million years ago.
Yeah.
We're talking 14.6 billion years. To think that right now, in the universe, when distances are thousands of light years away, that we would interact with something and it is somehow alive right now at the exact same microscopic pinhole of a dot in the timeline that is the universe, the same time as us. So maybe there's been whole civilizations come and gone a billion times over on planets that are tens of millions of light years away. That, to me, does not mitigate the fact because we haven't seen them. Like sending radio waves into space, as he was talking about, was one of the most inefficient ways in the world. Because how long do you run it for?
Yeah.
Say a month, and then you turn it off, and you're aiming at that planet. Then that planet out there better be pointing their antenna at you exactly 1 month, 1,000 light years from now.
Yeah.
And if they're not, didn't happen.
I used to believe in, especially the numbers of the planet, we're back to that formula, right? Based on a number of factors, water, is it terrestrial? Is it in the Goldilocks zone?
Yeah.
Is it...
they talked about the Goldilocks zone today.
The Goldilocks zone. And they calculated based on I think it was 10 or so factors, right?
Yeah.
And based on billions of planets out there, and there should be life out there.
Fermi's paradox.
But
Fermi's paradox says that there should be life out there.
Yes, there should be life out there. The problem is that now, and that formula was devised. Oh Jesus, I can't remember. It was 1960s, 70s. Now they've come up with. They're starting to realize that maybe there was life, but
or there will be life.
The chances of it existing in our timeline,
and even our timeline, people forget that when they see, every time you look in the sky, you're at a telescope. You are looking at a time machine.
We, what's scary is so you come to this realization that maybe we really were a big, huge number of chances that just happened to play out right.
Yeah, maybe we're the first.
Maybe
Something
we're the
has to be
first. Yeah, somebody's got to be first, right?
They're saying that based on the simple math they do about expansion rates and when the last star is going to die out, being the fact that we are, even with the universe being 14 billion years old, we are in the first 0.00001% of the time that will be the existence of this universe. So maybe in the way humans are going, let's be honest, we're not going to be around in 100,000 years.
You bring me to the next factor that they just brought up recently, is that maybe a civilization has come and gone, because most civilizations, as we've seen in our past, tend to almost come to the brink of destruction, and either they figure it out as an entire entity, or they don't.
Or even if they try to figure it out, I think at the end of the day, every type of life form, by any definition of life that we have, whether intelligent or not, uses physical resources. And at the end of the day, maybe everybody just burns out because you deplete. I mean, when you and I were starting school, the population was like 4 billion. Now it's roughly 8 billion. Yeah. And our kids are going to be 30 billion. That's starting to look a lot like that movie Interstellar.
Yeah, it's starting to be scary.
Yeah, and then it just can't support it. So then maybe that's what happens. I mean, civilizations on Earth have crumbled before. Maybe as a whole.
I always think of those civilizations that just vanished.
Just took off.
You know, Mesopotamia and
the Mayans.
Yes.
The Aztecs.
Gone. The Inca.
Yeah. And then as a macro scale, maybe that's what happens. Maybe
just think they completely vanished. Nobody's around. Well, I wonder what happened back then. Was there a huge big fire? Was there did everybody just kill each other off? And
well, you know what happens, because that's our perception. We think that everything emptied overnight. And then when you read about the more recent, like when the fall of the Roman Empire,
yes,
it still happens over hundreds of years.
Decades, yeah.
So look how even in our time, you can see a country fall apart in 15 years. You know, like you pick any of those fucking Middle Eastern places or whatever.
Yugoslavia?
Yeah.
Whatever they're called now.
A country can literally fall into ruin in 50 years. So when you're giving something like 300 or 400 years, like if the Aztecs took 150 years to fall to pieces, well, 150 years is a long time. 150 years ago, what was Canada as a country?
Yes.
And back then, you're talking about population bases that are even still an order of magnitude smaller. So even if civilization was big, it wasn't 300 million people. It was like 250,000. It was like Winnipeg. Yeah, and then guess what? A couple of people get sick, a couple of bad crops, weather patterns change. Yeah, that's going to dissolve. It's not like humanity disappeared.
No.
Just that the structure that held those people together, the common bond, which is keep each other alive, they weren't able to do that, then they're going to disperse. And people still have Aztec blood in them or something, but, you know, single families moved on, things intermarried, intermingled, and humanity, again, carried on. Life found
a way. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jurassic Park.
Yes. The center cannot hold. Chaos theory. So, are there any other pertinent points you talked about today? Again, I highly encourage people to listen to the podcast 1003 with Joe Rogan and Sean the Cosmologist on there.
It sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it was. It really went along. And their summary they got to was that Joe says, "Do you ever find yourself asking, like, why? Why are we here? Why are you doing?" No. And then he talked about how atheists come usually, in many studies, again, many studies have indicated, but during a emotional crisis or a family crisis, something like that, the atheists handle themselves better because they don't put the blame on anything and they can move past something. Meanwhile, if someone else, who believes in whatever, right and wrong or God, and then their wife get cancer, it's like, well, why? And they can't move past it because they have to reconcile their belief that something had intent that caused this evil thing to happen. And he's like, at the end of the day, as a physicist, you learn that just stuff happens. It doesn't have to be interesting.
It just doesn't have to be a reason.
Yeah, stuff happens in the universe every microsecond of every day. And some of it is the fact that in one person, enough cells have developed to create whatever dysfunction and disorder you're talking about.
Yeah. That's what science is beginning to explain, that's for sure.
And the fact is that it's not because some entity pointed a finger at you or your family and said, guess what?
I require you in the gates of hell.
Yes, and you're getting pulled down. So I don't know. You can take a crack at this, what the bleep, and see if it answers.
You may be
questions.
recommending that, but I'm telling you, people, don't waste your time, man. I'm telling you, don't watch this unless you are an addict and require some inspiration.
Yes, if you are strung out on heroin,
yes,
and you've tried everything
then
else,
you should try this.
Then watch this. Don't watch it on heroin.
That's debatable.
I guess maybe so.
All right. Well,
I think
it's a little more serious note this
well,
time, but we got to switch it up every once in a while.
Covered it up. Of course, we will take suggestions. Won't always obviously be this serious, but we wanted to look at something from our viewpoint, and of course didn't provide the what's the word I'm looking for here, the debate fuel.
No.
That we may have anticipated.
No, it's pretty low on content validity.
Yeah, but it did get us talking about things like pseudoscience and
And I think that's the big takeaway.
It truly is. I think that this entertainment is a perfect example of some of the dangers that are out there. Because 1 out of 1,000 people are going to watch this or something like this and make what they perceive as an informed decision that can have profound negative health consequences to them and the people they love. Yeah.
That's a good way to wrap it up.
I think it's a good wrap it up. Well, thanks for popping over. Cheers once again. And to all you musers out there, hope you're able to keep up with us. Thanks for tuning in. After this episode, I am going into the eye of the needle of Hurricane Irma. So hopefully this wasn't our last episode ever. But have fun out there. Stay safe. I look forward to talking to you again on our next episode. And hope you enjoyed this episode of Musing While Boozing.
This has been an MK Cast production.
Musing While Boozing.